You're in a new situation and someone asks your opinion about the direction in which you should go. How do you respond? What should you say? Especially if you feel like you're going or what's proposed to be the direction is the wrong direction and you have some thoughts, experience, insight as to a direction that would be more effective or advantageous. How do you respond? My name is Jennifer Mitchell Early. I help individuals and teams achieve organizational and personal success by providing customized training, resources, tips, and tools to help you pursue purpose and accomplish your goals. If you're looking to grow and evolve personally and professionally, be sure to subscribe and don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified every time I upload new content. If you have been watching me for any length of time, you know that I am a training and development consultant with more than 20 years in the field. I have been a training specialist. I have done every area of training from needs analysis to delivery, every aspect of it, and have worked with various clients within various industries. I started off my career in banking and was asked the question, often asked the question, in fact, how do I consult with clients who want to go in a different direction than what I propose? And so today I'm going to answer this in that vein, but also I think this goes for any industry, any job that you have. It's always important to listen and observe, especially when you are in a new role, in a new industry, asked to do a new task that maybe you're not as familiar with. And even those tasks where you are familiar, but you're still the new kid on the block, you just sat down to the seat that was created for you at the table. I have found success in listening and observing. Because you really don't know what's going on until you have a great understanding of it. So I've talked about in a video in the past about a client that I was given on a project that was new to training and development, to formal training and development, in that they always did their own training. They believed highly in having employees shadow another successful employee and having that employee not only do their job, but also train new employees on how to do their job. And so they had no interest at all in doing any formalized training that had worked for them. The problem is that they were now a part of this project that was enterprise wide. And so now their department fell under the auspices of project management. And within that management was a change management department that would deliver all the training needed to facilitate this enterprise wide training endeavor. And so they were basically forced to use the change management team because of the program, because of the project. And so I was assigned, this was a industry that was new to me, had never been in this industry before, did not understand the terminology, the jargon, anything that they were talking about. It was literally like being, kid you not, in a foreign land, listening to people talk in a foreign language. I had no idea what they were talking about. So when I got the assignment, I was told, hey, Jennifer, we're going to transition you from where you are now to this new project we think that you'd be perfect for. Oh, and by the way, they really don't want our help. So if you have any problems getting any information or, being able to move forward and what we need to do for you to document the change and create all the training materials, let us know. Yeah, that was the introduction that was given to me. So needless to say, even though I had been doing training and development for over 20 years at that point or close to, I had never been necessarily in a position where I was forced on a client, where they really didn't see the value in formalized training and where I was going to have to, be shoved down their throat. So this was going to be an interesting endeavor, I thought, to say the least. So I was introduced at a point in the project where The client was buying new technology, new software. And so they had already purchased the software, and they were in client meetings with the vendor for the vendor to customize the software to my client's needs. And so if you haven't seen the video, I'll post it so that you can see it or link it down below where I get into the nooks and crannies of it. I won't do that today. I'm just using this as an example of listening and observing. And so I was brought into these meetings again where I didn't know my behind from a hole in the ground, where people did not know me. They weren't necessarily excited to see me or have me to be a part. They were not mean at all. They were not unprofessional. They were not unwelcoming. They just were doing their own thing. And so I was kind of like an island unto myself. So I did a lot of listening. I did a lot of note taking. I did a lot of observations, just realizing who was in the room, who were the stakeholders, what their position was, where they were in the process. Did they completely understand what the vendor was saying? Did the vendor completely understand what the client needed or wanted? And, where would I fit into all of this? That's what I was doing. I was listening, I was taking copious notes, and I was observing. It's very important that even if you're in a situation where your role is not new, the client isn't new, but maybe the task is, it's very important not to go in there guns a-blazing, Mr. or Mrs. Know-it-all. Nobody likes a know-it-all. Nobody turns to a know-it-all and is like, hey, what do you think? Because a know-it-all is always going to insert themselves into something that unsolicited, that they haven't been invited into, that they're not really welcomed into, and that people don't really appreciate their enthusiasm or expertise because they're forcing themselves on them. So, what I did was I was just very, very quiet. I came in every day in these meetings where they were talking about stuff I didn't know. I took copious notes. I said hello to everyone. I was polite. I did ask questions when I had them. They were very nice. They clarified all of my questions. And guess what? When I left those meetings and I went back to my department, back to my desk, I did homework. If there was terminology or jargon that was used that I didn't understand, I looked it up or I asked other teammates who were familiar with that industry. I was working for a utility. And for those individuals who have been working there for, on average, 15 to 20 years, they understood it. So I can go back and I could ask more, I'll say simplistic questions to them, more obvious questions maybe to them, and they could answer those questions. So I did a lot of listening. I did a lot of observing. I did a lot of work behind the scenes to bring myself up to speed so I could understand what was being said and what their needs were. Now, as a learning and development consultant, as a training and development professional who had done this for so many years, I understand what it takes to design and develop a training program that will meet the needs of the participants and or end user. I don't really need any assistance with that. I understand how to cultivate that. I understand how to apply the design cycle. I know how to apply adult learning principles. I understand the 1/3, 2/3. I understand the different learning styles. Those things I understood. What I didn't necessarily understand was the utility, the client needs, and their end users. So after sitting in those vendor meetings before the rollout, when I talked to my clients, I also began to build relationships. That's important. So when you come in and you're willing to quietly listen and observe and ask clarifying questions and note who the stakeholders are, what their roles are, what roles they play, how they fit into the larger scheme of things, then you understand, you then begin to make relationships. So for my client, they had individuals on their team who were doing the development, and they were not developers. This was not IT. These were people who work within the department who were selected to now be developers. right? Because they understood what they needed. So in the client's mind, these employees, because they understand our needs, they understand our department, they understand what this software is replacing, they would be the best to develop it as opposed to IT. Now, they did work in tandem with IT, but they were the ones developing it. They were writing all of the development. They were doing all of the sprints for the development, and the sprints were just like the directions for what the system is supposed to do, right? So they were writing all the stories for the sprints. And so I got really close with the developer and the manager for my client about what they needed and what was expected of me in the process. So by listening and observing, you grasp the context and nuances of not only the team and the environment, but also helps you understand the dynamics, the expectations and norms, which is essential for effective communication and interaction. I've always said that the first thing that I think somebody needs, or one of the basics, the foundational keys to being successful in training and development, as a learning and development consultant, as a training specialist, as an instructional designer, whatever role, facilitator, is communication. You have to be an effective communicator. Second is building relationships. So active listening and keen observation demonstrate respect and interest in others. And it helped me and can help you build trust and rapport, making it easier to form meaningful connections. It was lots of times that I was not sitting at my desk. Rather, I was sitting at one of the developers' desks. Like, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend? How was your evening? How are the kids? Or whatever small talk, that we built over time because we established a relationship, then led me into, hey, I got a question. I built this sandbox and I was playing in the system. And so when I did X, Y, and Z, the expected response did not happen. Where are we at in development? What are your thoughts about that? Can we tweak this? Things that normally I would get in the aftermath, after everything is developed, I had an opportunity because of relationship to be a part of the development as it was laid out. And at that time, I could interject what was important from a training and development standpoint, not necessarily just from a departmental standpoint. Because remember, whatever they did with this software, whatever development, I had to be able to then take that information and translate it to something that was effective, cohesive, and that transferred for their employees to be able to utilize after the system was built. When you're observant and you listen, you can adapt to new situations more quickly. So you become familiar with the situation more quickly and are able to then assess any challenges that could come up. So by paying attention, you learn from others' experiences and adapt your behavior accordingly, which leads to better decision making and problem solving. And that's what I found with that project that I was on. Maybe problems that I would have had after the fact or that I faced later on with further development, I could circumvent when I talk to the developer and the manager of my client group, because then I could just have his ear and then he could take it up the chain, as opposed to having an all hands meeting where we all have to discuss it and then we have multiple hands in the pot. Then we could talk to one another. Also was able to gain insights, and insights are the most valuable information. Sometimes it's not explicitly stated. Sometimes in talking to the end user, which I was able to do, I could see how this software was going to directly impact them and what their challenges might be with a change in software right now, and what the problems were with the old software, what their hopes and expectations were with the new software, and how a rollout would affect them. So initially, my client wanted to develop their own training. They thought that they would do 3 1-hour training events or initiatives, and that they would have me to develop PowerPoints. And initially, even though I knew that was not going to work, I said, sure, I'll do that. And then I went back to my manager and I said, hey, this is what they like to have. And she knew that wasn't going to work. And we had an all hands meeting that boiled down to me doing the development and having 2 weeks to develop a training that I estimated at that time would take 8 hours. And the client, because they were so unaccustomed to formal training, even though I had built these relationships, even though I had gained insights, and even though we had been developing this kind of together in tandem with what I needed for training and development and what they needed for their department, this new software rollout, they were going live in 2 weeks, or maybe it was 3 weeks at that point. They were going live in 3 weeks, and they needed to have this training done, and they were going to do what they were always accustomed to doing, which was these 3 1-hour trainings. And all they wanted was a PowerPoint. So at the conclusion of our all hands on meeting with the vendor, with my management, with the consultants who work with us and their peer, every manager for the company had a peer leader from the consultants group. And so we all sat at a table, my manager with her peer consultant, myself, the developers, my client, the manager for my client group, his manager, his consultant, peer leader. And it came down to, no. Change management will do this. Jennifer will develop it. Are you good with it, Jennifer? And my response was yes. And inside my head, I was like going crazy. Like a little miniature version of me was running back and forth in my mind. Like, oh my God, like where'd I start? Papers flying everywhere. But on the outside, I was calm, cool, and collected. But I really was thinking, this is going to be a trip. So in any case, it was developed. I needed 8 hours. The client, who was unaccustomed to formal training, said that's too long. The most I will give you is 6. I said, fine. What else do you say? And I developed the training. Training was extremely successful. Again, they had never had formal training before. They all sat down with each other. They were able to talk from engineer down to, representative or specialist level, and talk about the software and how it was going to make their job easier and so forth and so on. And when it was all said and done, the manager for my client group turned to me and said, Jennifer, that was great. We've never experienced training like this. We didn't know it was possible. I think it was, we've never had opportunity to talk amongst ourselves and learn together. This was fabulous, but I think it was a little rushed. What do you think? And I chuckled and I said, yes, because we did it in 6 hours. We really need 8. And from that point on, I had 8 hours to conduct that training. I had the green light to produce or develop an entire curriculum that spanned multiple days. Remember, they originally wanted 3 hours, 3 1-hour trainings and 3 PowerPoints for me to develop. So that was a success. That was a success because I started off by listening and observing. I came in, even with all of my knowledge, all of my knowledge in learning and development, I never said to them, those PowerPoints, that's not going to work. People don't learn like that. You have all this information, you're going to try to condense into like a presentation where you talk to people. It's not going to stick. It's not going to work. They won't know what they're doing. You have to redo. I didn't do any of that. I may have thought quite a bit of that, but I never said any of that. Part of building relationships with your client is allowing them to still be in control, to still do what they need to do as a manager of a department or a leader of a division, to understand that your outlook on the training may start off a little different, right? At the end of the day, my division, the manager for the division and for the project wants one thing. They want to change the software and they want the employees to be able to use it at go live, period. All the intricate details of how it's received by the employees, how it's used on boots on the ground, all those things, I don't even think is a part of their scope of what their thoughts are. Their thoughts are, I'm managing this project, or I'm managing this division, or I'm managing this department, and I need X, Y, and Z to happen, period, full stop. My perspective, your perspective as a leader, as a training and development specialist, as a consultant, is to show them how to do that successfully. Your job, my job, is to consider the people to consider how it translates, how it transfers, how it's utilized. That's my job. So as I talk to clients and our views are different, I respect that. I appreciate that because they're just doing their job and I'm just doing my job. What I have to be, though, is a bridge between how they view it, how I view it, and the end result. So that's my job. And that's a job that I take very seriously. So there have been times where I have pushed back on clients once I have been there long enough to observe, once I have listened to the needs and I have a full understanding of what is required to be successful, then I can say to them, and I did say to this client at one point, this is not going to work. And let me tell you why. So what I like to do is once I determine the primary goals of the training, and we move forward in that, I like to always clarify expectations. If you've been watching me for any length of time, I've also done a video on or talked about setting expectations. I do that in every aspect of my life because it's so important to ensure that you are on the same page. And the only way that you do that is to define your expectations and clarify them to make sure that everyone is in agreement with that. So once I do all of those things and we're already in that relationship, that's a part of my relationship building. Once I've built a relationship with you and you trust me, right? Because of the work that I've done for you, the way that my work ethic, the way that you see that I go about that. Then when I push back, it's not so abrasive. It's not so unexpected because now my clients expect me to make sure that they have a holistic, training initiative, that I have thought about everything and that I'm going to ensure success. I'm going to ensure that when their employees walk away from training with me, that I have designed and developed, or even that I have facilitated, that their employees will be able to do the job. And at the end of the day, and do the job correctly the first time, so that they are successful and that they are confident in what they do. And then once my clients have worked with me, they understand that. But I don't break into a new relationship like, oh, no, that ain't going to work. That's wrong. I don't do any of that. I do very little pushback in the beginning. And in some instances, I have found that has frustrated people who know what I'm capable of, who know what I bring to the table. But that's because they know. For people who don't know what I'm capable of, or they don't understand what training really is, I have to be careful. I have to assess the situation and I have to carefully walk into that and walk them through what is going to be the best outcome based on the needs assessment that I've done. So I do a lot of things. I talk to my clients. I talk to their team. I spend a lot of time out in the trenches watching the people who are going to do the job, who are going to be most impacted by the change. I see what they want, what they need, and all that gets incorporated into my design and development. So that even if I don't facilitate the program, all those things have already been considered in the way that I have designed the program. And then I regularly communicate with all levels. I communicate with my client, their employees, the end users. I communicate with whoever has contracted me, my teammates, and all of that to ensure that things will go smoothly. So pushing back, I'll get more into in later videos. But I want to start with how you enter, right? How you enter into these relationships, because that's the foundation. And on this channel and in these podcasts, I talk about foundational things because so many times we get carried away, or we get caught up. That's probably a better way of saying it. We get caught up in the trends and the new novel ways to do things, and we forget the basics. Now, there's a saying, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. And I always say that because there's something foundational in the basics. Once you have a strong foundation, you can build anything. But if you have a weak foundation, what you build won't stand. So I'm always going to point you back to the foundational things. Sometimes you may go somewhere where your reputation precedes you and you already go in with credibility and you can just go in guns a blazing. even if I go in with credibility, I always like to take things slow. And I'll leave you with this thought. I had joined a foundation, a nonprofit organization, and I had joined it at a time where they were going to go to a point where they would start to install new leaders. And so in the installation process, when we were getting ready to have people to say that they wanted to be, the president or the vice president and all that, where they were going up into the nomination process. I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out the words. The nomination process. When it was all said and done, one of the newly installed president turned to me and said, why didn't you nominate yourself or have someone nominate you for an office? And I said, because that's not what I do. When I get to a new place or in a new role, I sit and observe and I listen and I just make sure that I know what I've gotten myself into and what's required of me before I leap into something else. Now, what this person knew about me was that I'm a leader. This person knew that I was an elected official, that I had led before, and this person had watched me and was excited that I was on the board and wanted me to be in a leadership position. But that's just not and I never held a leadership position. I listened, I observed, and I made decisions about what roles I would play based on what I learned over time. And so sometimes before we're so quick to run and jump and get into things, we do ourselves a disservice when we don't sit back and we don't listen and we don't observe and we don't take note of what's actually going on, what's actually going to be required, what the job fully entails, not just what someone told us about it, not what we've seen in passing, but the day to day, because the day to day practical realities are very different than what we think we might have saw in passing or what someone has said to us about it. So hopefully this helps. If you have any other questions, this topic came to me some time ago. Someone asked me, they're a trainer and they want to know how I push back on clients. If you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments below, or reach out and connect with me and I will do my best to answer your questions. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in my next video.